Tell me what your thoughts are. I mean, last night, yes, it was a bloody nose for the Tories, but they held the seat.
Well, I think people are very angry about the migrant crossings, very angry about lockdown. That's why we've seen a low turnout. They don't want to vote for Labour because Labour offer exactly the same thing on migrant crossings and on lockdown and on a number of issues. But they don't want to vote for Tories because they don't want to give their consent to what's going on at the moment. So people just simply stayed at home. So we saw a very low turnout, but we also saw a rise in the swing to Labour and also to Reform UK. People aren't really talking about that. 6%, it's almost 7%, I think, in the polls for Reform. That's a huge figure for a party which has not really had much press coverage. It hasn't had much in terms of saying anything, and really just as a protest vote against the party. I think that's quite incredible. Well,
Reform UK is the perfect option at the next election for anyone, including many of my viewers, who feel politically homeless.
Well, I want to see it substantiated a bit more. They've got some time to really build some kind of manifesto and put forward some good candidates. Obviously, the Brexit Party in 2019 was an absolutely incredible tour de force in that election. It stood for so much. People understood what it stood for. They knew the people who were standing in the election. They had a great crop of candidates. But in this coming election, whenever it's going to be, they really need to establish that presence again as Reform so that people really know exactly what they stand for in a post-Brexit period.
And I wonder what would be the manifesto promise of Reform UK. As you said, they've certainly got a year, perhaps 2 years, to prepare a platform. I would have thought that they would guarantee in any future pandemic to handle the pandemic based upon libertarian principles, no lockdowns, no business closures. I mean, that's what some Democrat politicians, some Republican politicians are currently fighting on at the moment in America. They're saying they're running on a campaign message of no lockdowns, no school closures, and no business closures.
Yeah, a lot of what the Brexit Party stood for was pro-business, pro-freedom, that sort of liberty, business, trade, etc., that idea. If you apply that then to the lockdown era, you know, pro-business, pro-freedom, etc., that's the perfect platform. It's a logical development of the same values that they had in the previous election, but in the modern age with all of this lockdown and whatnot that's going on at the moment. So I think that's what they really need to position themselves towards if they want to frighten the Conservative Party into taking a much more conservative stance on these things and not just going along with what the rest of the world are doing. We've seen things in Australia and New Zealand. We don't want that here.
Back in 2010, David Cameron felt the hand of Nigel Farage on his shoulder. Of course, Nigel of this parish now. And David Cameron was politically astute because he took seriously the threat from Nigel and from UKIP, and his solution was to offer the British public a referendum on EU membership during that 2010 campaign. And I think that certainly, I mean, it was a hung parliament, but the Tories were the biggest party, and I think it was because of that decision. Can you see the Prime Minister Boris Johnson pivoting to the right or pivoting towards freedom or being more decisive on the Channel crisis based upon pressure from Richard Tice and from Reform UK? Could a similar dynamic emerge?
One of the problems over the past 2 years is that there's been absolutely no threat from the right. It's all come from the left. So Boris has had to lean into the left.
And he's outspending Jeremy Corbyn virtually.
Exactly. The tax rises, the restrictions, all of these things, they are not Conservative policies. But why would you adopt Conservative policies when you have no Conservative opposition? You have no threat in that regard. So the most Conservative that people can vote for at the moment is the Conservative Party, whatever it stands for. And so you find this sort of weird centre-left policy making within the party, which isn't what people voted for in 2019, and it's not what they want to vote for at the next election. So we really need to see a threat come from parties like Reform. If anything, I'd love to see some kind of unity between the parties. You know, we've got Reclaim, we've got Reform, we've got Heritage, blah, blah, blah. We've got all of these different parties, but they're all working at cross purposes. We need to get some kind of coherent opposition to things like lockdown and to the Channel crossings, which people are very angry about in this country, but they have absolutely no outlet electorally to vote against.
And possibly an electoral arrangement between the likes of UKIP, Neil Hamilton, Reform UK and the rest of them, that they work together in any future national poll.
Yeah, so you have this old thing of the Progressive Alliance on the left. We need that sort of equivalent on the other side. We need to get some kind of... And not just... It's not even about left or right anymore. It's about freedom. It's about really basic principles. It's not a left or right issue. It's about...
And you can't rule out Tory defections, and particularly,
no.
Even in the Commons.
But the main thing, the main force, isn't the defections. It's the fact that people within the party are emboldened by that opposition. They can turn around and say to Boris, if we don't get serious on this issue, I'm going to lose my seat. You're going to let me down. You know, we really need to get some kind of answer for my constituents so that I don't lose my seat in the next election. When you get that pressure coming from within the Conservative Party, it moves the whole party back to its core principles, which are freedom, conservatism, and pro-business.
And what about the public's view of Boris Johnson, most importantly his supporters? Do you think they will bear with him for the foreseeable future? What's your prognosis for Boris Johnson? Does he make it to fight the next election?
Well, it depends on if you mean in the electorate or within the party. Within the party, I think it's entirely dependent on whether they're going to keep their seats. So you see the Red Wall, for example, the moment they start to see the Red Wall being threatened, it's likely that they're going to lose the gains they made in 2019. All of those Red Wall MPs will say, hang on, I'm not sure I'm so loyal to this man anymore than I was previously because I'm going to lose my seat. What's the point in, at this point, staying loyal to Boris Johnson? If someone else can come along who is a better candidate, who's more likely to keep those gains, then why wouldn't they support them?
Now, one of the key issues is the migrant crisis. Boris Johnson thinks his big issue now after Brexit is the environment. I don't think it is. I think it's national security, and I think it's our borders, and I also think it's the cost of living and the economy. Those, I think, would be top of his inbox. Are you hearing better mood music between the Brits and the French when it comes to the Channel crisis?
Well, I don't think so. I mean, they're saying a lot of good things, but I think whatever olive branch they seem to have offered is more of a Trojan horse. It's something which is being dressed up to be a really good solution, but whatever agreement I think would actually result in us receiving more migrants than we send back. It would be one of those two-way streets sort of thing where we would end up getting people sent to us via what they call safe and legal routes in order to stop the illegal Channel crossings. But we don't want that either. You know, we actually want to prevent these people from coming over. What was the point in Brexit if we're starting to accept more migrants than we were during the time we were in the EU?
And obviously we want a humanitarian policy and, you know, it's suboptimal, the situation at the moment, and of course tragic in some cases, as we saw the week before last. But ultimately, you know, the public, the unedifying sight of people sort of, you know, arriving in the UK, undocumented, in dinghies, running for the hills, covering their faces. This is just a shocking spectacle. It's unacceptable to the British people.
Yeah, and it's one of the reasons why things like the environment aren't a huge issue, because that's, even if it is a threat, it's an intangible threat. But when you see the people arriving in boats, running up into the hills, that's very tangible. People can see it, it's happening. That, you know, you can be sunbathing on a beach down in Kent or, you know, Folkestone or Dover, and people can run past you off the boat. You know, these beach landings, they've happened. People just sunbathing have seen these sorts of things happening. And when it's so in your face, I think people get quite angry about it.
And of course, the messaging is key, because when you facilitate these routes, and of course, you know, nobody wants a tragedy to happen, and that's why this has to stop altogether, because it's a national security emergency. It's also a humanitarian emergency too. But you're really communicating with the gangsters, with these criminals, these millionaire thugs who are taking money off people to make this crossing. And it's those are the people that we must communicate to say it ain't going to work and you won't get people into the country.
Well, at the moment, their business is being facilitated by the French and the British governments because we are not getting around the negotiating table and making sure that something is solved. I see this less as an issue for the Home Secretary and more one for the Foreign Secretary and the Prime Minister. This is an issue of international diplomacy. We need to be communicating across borders to prevent this from happening. They shouldn't be leaving the French shore in the first place.
How much is the French election a factor, and when it's done and dusted and over, do you think this could be resolved? Because I read in the Times this week one particular columnist who said there is no end to this crisis. Well, it can't be fixed.
It's a huge factor in the sense that in France they have the opposite problem to what we have here, in the sense that Macron's main opposition is Eric Zemmour. So that's a threat from the right. When in France people see migrants leaving, that plays into Macron's election strategy, because they think, thank God, these people are these camps on the
we don't want them.
Northern France. Yeah,
send them to Britain.
They don't want them. If they're leaving, that plays well for Macron. And when he comes out and calls Boris Johnson a clown and says it's a circus
and cancels meetings with the Home Secretary,
meetings and all of this anti-British rhetoric, that plays into his base very well, because people are very angry about this sort of thing over there. So Macron doesn't want a big story saying Macron agrees no more migrants going to Britain just before an election. That is not in his interests. So it's in his interests for this to continue. And that's what we need to contend with.
Briefly, if you can, when do you think the next UK general election will be?
I'd say probably sometime in mid-2023, unless there is an emerging threat from a party like Reform and some sort of Conservative alliance, in which case I think Boris would want to call it as soon as possible to prevent that from getting off the ground. So it really just depends on how the next few months go.